Raw dogs. Woo. No,
Been doing this for
no.
too long.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
No, it's not.
I'm embracing video. You don't want to embrace the video. Okay, actually that's really unfair. Like if we had a room raider for don't worry about the government guests, like if that little dopey Twitter account was doing our show, you'd probably be like number one in the power rankings so far.
Now, what am I? Number one of what?
Your room
Oh, the
code.
room.
Yeah.
Okay, so this right here, you can't really tell while it's plugged in. That's a salt lamp of a cat. Can
Oh.
you even see that it's a
No,
cat?
it's just a blinding
It's just an
white
orb.
light. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the orb.
Uh, okay. I'm not gonna get up to turn it off right
No,
now.
you
So,
shouldn't turn it off. It's probably keeping your light balanced.
of course. I just want to. I feel
Yeah,
like
no, you were just
someone's
testing
gonna call
me.
me out. That's
Yeah,
not
you
a
were
cat.
testing me. Yeah.
Yeah. And this, I've had this for a while. It's a lot fancier than the price I paid for it. So is most of the things. So are most of the things I own. I used to be in real estate, and in DFW, I would be downtown sometimes, and there'd be a high rise for sale, and it's open. It's an open house or something like that. So I was downtown. I went and took a look at it, and this was furnished. The place was totally furnished, and they had already sold the place. Someone just sold it. For some reason, it was open, but now they were selling everything in the building, in the place that they had furnished. Apparently, these real estate agencies, sometimes they'll occasionally, instead of moving everything out and moving it back into a new place, they'll just sell everything and buy all new stuff.
Yeah. And
So I bought this off the wall for $50, and
Nice.
I've been getting my $50 out of it for a few years now. I think some kid wrote on it in crayon, or maybe that was the artist. I'm kind of pleading ignorance to that. Maybe the crayon was an artistic sensibility that I just don't get, or maybe there was some kid in the house for sale that just wrote all over the painting in a crayon. But I love it, and it's been in my globe for a while.
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a couple of those. I actually have one sitting right here. Check this out. You thought you were just gonna be able to flex on me. I don't need the guitars. The guitars.
I wasn't trying to.
No, you were trying to flex. You're trying.
Why does it have to?
You wanted it to be a competition. You made it into the competition. I didn't. I'm not competitive like that. But no, I'm not petty. I'm just saying I've got one of these too.
Okay.
I'll let people decide which one is more aesthetically pleasing.
Hold on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Like that a lot of people would say that that's a very they would say that's nice. They would say that's a good thing that I have. And I'm gonna hold this up for the okay. No, that's fine. I could do the whole show like this.
I
I'm
got
not gonna
first and second place, by the way, and Chris is coming in third.
That's not right. You're wrong. I'm not.
See, it's so
third.
big it doesn't even fit on the screen.
It does
That's
fit
also
on
I'm
the screen. It's fitting. I'm moving it closer so that people can like really take in. Like, there's a sheen that comes off of it. Like, I'm trying to get the light balance just right. Look at that. You can really see Africa right now. You can really, yeah. This is probably. I think this is a bad projection. This is probably one of those like racist ones that has Africa. No, this is definitely one of the racist ones that has Africa too small. But yeah.
Isn't that all the maps until like 6 months ago?
I think that, but no, you're like, to your point. The most famous like map projection we have is like from the '60s or whatever, and it does project like Africa way smaller than it actually is.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I don't have this on my wall, but in a way, isn't it kind of cool? Doesn't it say something about me intellectually speaking that I just had this adjacent?
If I say yes, can we move on?
If you say yes, I don't have to do the whole show with the map here. So that's fine. That's fine. I will take that. Game, set, match, checkmate.
Everything's a competition. I guess.
It's not everything is you are so competitive.
But this is.
You're needlessly competitive about so many things. It's petty. It's small. Small people.
I have a salt lamp.
Yeah, no, I know. Keep flexing. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So this show is yesterday's show was I really enjoyed yesterday's show. I will say that. I thought it was a lot of fun. I also wrote the show and like I was planning on having Joey Insider on, and then I had the other two guys on as well in addition to Joey Insider, made a very different product. But like we went through that show slate, the 492's show slate, and I'm sure those of you who watched the pre-show banter on that realized that we didn't end up talking about much of any of that. So like go where the conversation goes, but I figured we might take another pass at that and then also talk about some of the stuff on the Biden or on the Biden-y side of the ledger here. Like we were supposed to kind of stick exclusively to Trump yesterday. I was going to do Trump one day and Biden the other day. Keep it fair and balanced. We're all about fair and balanced here. But it didn't really work out. That's okay. That's okay. Conversation is an exploration of the space of the mind. Put that on my tombstone.
Okay. So I'm going to have to live longer than you, I guess. All right. I mean, how long were you planning on living? I'm trying to make it till
maybe about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Oh, it got too dark. It got too dark.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Live, thrive, survive, baby. Outlast, outwit, survivor. So,
yeah, but
yeah, it was the show.
Once again, we're back into gamesmanship here, and I feel like you think that winning the game is just living longer than me, but I was born before you, so isn't that kind of like a handicap? Because
did you just invoke the game?
No, everything being a game so far.
I thought you think you brought up the game.
Or the most dangerous game? Or
no,
which
the game? No, you know the game.
What the game?
The game, yeah.
Is this like the secret?
You don't want, the game, the game. You you remember the game from when we were kids? The game.
What are you talking? I'm losing the game. Whatever it is.
Look it up later, man. It's like snipe hunting. The game is complicated.
Is this some who's on first thing? This is a who's on first thing. You're screwing with me.
Maybe. Google the game. Google the game.
right now?
No, not right now. It was like back in the day. It was kind of like, did you ever bait anyone with the snipe hunting stuff? Like there is no such thing as a snipe, and like the game is like this thing that like you like sort of amorphously tease about like there are games and you don't want to lose the game, and the rube keeps asking about the game and trying to figure out what the game is, and there is no game.
So
it's a stupid game that kids play. Like the game is actually the game. The game, like it's this very the game is this very meta thing.
This is just an example of how I'm older than you and how you experienced the game, and I think it was around before that, and it just passed me. I think I told my sister something like
snipe hunting's old.
Yeah, it was kind of like the tired joke I'd ask my sister if she knew the word gullible wasn't in the dictionary. Is this?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. You're sending them on a wild goose chase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your game is a lot more comprehensive than the gullible game.
Well, I think gullible is kind of like it's like meta in a certain way, but the thing about the game is like you can really, if you're good at that, you can kind of drag on the game for like days.
Okay, well, there is a game that I did used to play something like this back when I would go to bars on occasion in Denton. This was when I employed this game, or employed this game. Which one is it? I don't know. I I uh, I activated this game most often when I was in Denton, and anytime found myself just in the bathroom, and you have that awkward moment when someone's next to you in an adjacent stall, and y'all are close enough to talk, and I say, hey, did you know that almost half of all people in this world are of below average intelligence? And then just waiting to hear the response, and the response was never, well, yeah, almost half of all people are inherently below average. It would always be like, yeah, there's a lot of stupid people in this world, and that's how the game goes. It's I've never received a logical answer to that question, but I've also never asked anyone who was sober. So
Yeah, I mean, like, what have you ever thought about, like, what the right answer is in
well,
your?
the right answer is, well, that's correct.
That's
Almost
math.
half of all people in this world are.
You just go. That's math.
Yeah, that's math. Yeah, yeah. The correct answer is, of course, that's math. But yeah, it's just too fun to shit on people to ignore that as math. Yeah.
Well, everyone likes feeling smarter, right? Like you. I mean, you like to feel like you're the smart one and everyone else is the dumb idiot. People don't generally like the "oh, I guess I'm wrong about stuff" thing.
Yeah.
There's a really limited market of shows that are like, you were wrong about that. Like Adam Ruins Everything and Bullshit and Mythbusters. It's like 3 shows.
Yeah.
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 All right, cool. So we've got show 492, show 493, and wherever we fucking go, we fucking go. There's a lot to talk about. All right, so let's get into it. I'm gonna come up for the free side. Ladies and gentlemen, hello again and welcome back to Don't Worry About the Government. My name is Chris Novembrino. Joining me on today's show is Brian Halverson. Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Good. Oh,
waving on the radio. Waving on the radio. Yeah.
Just I had to.
No.
This is the first time.
I like that. Like every single person has done some sort of visual gag. Now that there's a video side of this within like 2 minutes of the show starting.
Yeah, it's I guess when you worked on a show like this for long enough, it kind of feels like there's a new paradigm that you have to completely do wrong, and once you can do it wrong, like waving on the podcast and inside of your system, and like, oh yeah, it's just a camera.
It's just a camera. Like,
Yeah.
don't overthink it. The green light is that I'm staring at a green light. The green light's really you. What kind of helps me is I will like put the video frame like right underneath the green light to try to remind me to look into it, but I really don't like looking at the green light when I talk. But then if I don't do it, then I watch the videos later and I'm like, wow, it looks like you're avoiding eye contact. And what does that say about me? If I don't want to be one of these people who can't look you in the eye.
Yeah, and I have often been accused by people I have had some heated arguments with that my eyes will wander and it's suspicious and people want me to look them in the eye. But I feel like whenever someone says that, it's because if you don't look them in the eye, then they can't instill enough anger in you in order to make the conversation incendiary enough to please them. And I'm always skeptical of the look me in the eye when you're talking to me, because I feel like there should be some like derogatory term after that, because that's really where it comes from, where it originates.
Yeah, no, well, it's about controlling you, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's about like, it's about exerting a form of force onto you, to get you to, to act in a certain way, even if it's like a small thing. Yeah. But for a long time, like when I used to do these shows, I would even have my eyes open, which was, it was like a really welcome break from having to stare at screens all day. It's
Yeah.
like the cool thing about doing radios, but I can't be like standing here and doing the whole show like this. Although I basically would if you'd let me. I would just feel really, really bad doing the entire show with my eyes closed. But like, all the other shows, I never. God, unless I need the script for some reason, I just close my eyes and I can kind of see where I want to go next and stuff. It's better. But doing that on video, it looked like I'm like trying to like move through the fog, you know.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
want to.
I on this little sidebar here. All right, I don't know if it's a sidebar if we never really began, but
I mean, like
well,
I feel
yeah,
like we're about to shove off into the river
okay.
of news.
Thank you. Yeah, the
Yeah,
river of
yeah,
news.
the
So,
river of news.
my daughter is 6 now, and
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she's I don't know what age I've loved the most, but she finally started working on some sort of academic challenges where I have noticed whenever she is thinking, she looks off. Whenever the process of thinking is underway, she looks off. And I pointed that out to her recently. I said, did you notice that whenever you start thinking really hard, you look in a certain direction? She's like, what? I was like, no, I'll point it out again. And then a few minutes later, she did it. I was like, you did it again. And she just became so fascinated with how her brain worked. I was like, yeah, I don't know why either. I mean, there's good reasons, but I can't tell you why people,
Yeah, it's weird. It's like recollecting events is one direction. I don't really say lying's
yeah,
one direction, but I think it's different than that because it's like I feel like analytical, like putting two thoughts together and coming up with opinions on this side, whereas like recalling a thing or something's over here. I don't know. I don't have hard rules on that, but I definitely I always. I mean, I'm a big thinking like eyes up to the sky guy.
hmm
And as I said, I did for a long time. I do these shows just with my eyes closed. I find it's easier in a weird way to see the words if I don't have my eyes open. Uh, I that's gonna probably sound weird to people, but like I can kind of like I'm not. It's not like synesthesia in like the classical clinical sense, but like it's like I feel more connected to the sentence if I'm not taking in visual stimuli that's not doing anything for me.
oh yeah, I get it.
Do
I'm
you?
there. I
Okay.
do.
All right. All right. All right. Well, let's get into it. Do you want to begin on the Biden side or do you want to begin on the Trump side?
Ah,
You
man,
got
that's tough.
you got two great presidents to choose from.
All right, let's go with Biden. Yeah, very excited to go. I had to pick between both of these, and uh, boy, as soon as
Yeah,
I made the choice, I
it feels
instantly got
familiar.
excited. I don't know where that excitement came from. It just overcame me. And here I am, excited to talk
I
about
mean,
Biden.
yeah, okay. So like, we're not really talking about Biden today. Like the Biden side of the story here. And, let me throw up the share screen for everyone playing our home game here. So like, the Biden side of this is not so much about Biden. What I wanted to focus on here is this rise among Biden advocates of this negative partisanship fallacy. I kind of been talking about on the last several shows here this idea that we're in an era of negative partisanship, that people aren't Trump is not so much an affirmational argument. Like, people aren't voting affirmationally for Trump, at least not initially. Now it might be a little bit different, but that people were voting against Hillary Clinton. And people didn't so much vote for Joe Biden because Joe Biden excited people like Barack Obama in 2008 with the Hope and Change campaign. People voted for Joe Biden because they hate Donald Trump. People like me were advocating for Joe Biden with an intensity that we never advocated for with Barack Obama. I'll be completely honest. Because I hate Donald Trump. And that is, the way a lot of people felt. Hence the record turnout. And all of that. But what you are seeing now is negative partisanship sort of forming in a number of ways. Here's a Twitter account I found this week that's emblematic of a certain line of thinking. You're a Trumpist if you're not supporting Biden. And they're very upset about this war between Neera Tanden and the left, and we'll get into that here in a second too. I saw another one that said, if Mick Mulvaney and Red Rose Twitter don't like something, it's probably going to work out well. This is the line of thinking. Brian, I'm sure you've seen some of stuff like this. Ran into anything that kind of jogs your memory in this vein?
Nothing specific. And I do like to recognize whenever this is happening. But like you said, as far as this goes, they're speaking about this not from a power standpoint, but from a public sentiment standpoint. And so they're trying to tell you that because the public sentiment in this area and in that area online, that means that something is going to work out well, not in the public sentiment realm, but in the political realm, in the realm where power is actually wielded. This is relevant when you're talking about power, as far as if there was a leftist element and a GOP element that was all in Congress, and they could triangulate against the center. That makes sense to illustrate and to characterize as something that's worthy of note or volatile. But this, because public sentiment and power are so misaligned, and the center of the country is not the center of the power, this really makes no point at all. And the only way this becomes relevant is when the power in DC actually matches the sentiment in reality. And I mean, that's been a struggle for how many years have we been a country? This wants to feel like it matters, but because of how misaligned everything is, it really doesn't. It's not like people are reading into the tea leaves of public sentiment in Congress and saying, oh, you know what, they're right. We're being triangulated. No, there is no uh-oh moment. This is standard operating procedure. This is an amplification at that of public sentiment that really also isn't expressed through the national vote either. And like you said, we've got 80 million votes against Trump and 70 million votes against Biden. To speak to your point of how people vote against someone, and
74 million votes, for Donald Trump against Joe Biden. I think the Trump thing is it's interesting because I do think he manufactured and picked up votes, and that, but I also think his brand of politics is, it's a fundamentally broken brand of politics that really only works given the weird dynamics of the electoral college map. And it's built to win the electoral college map and utterly disregard the popular vote. And how long can you really govern like that? I think there are real limits to that. And how many elections can you really win in that formula? I think the answer
Yeah,
is not many.
well, that's true, but especially when you see that Joe Biden is leaning on a phrase like electability, it's not as though he is positioning himself agenda wise to make some sort of promise for what's to come.
I'll give him
The
electability. I'm worried about re-electability.
Hey, that wasn't the promise, man.
No, no,
but
yeah, exactly. He never promised me he'd get reelected.
but man, where was I going with that? But to this shit. I, it's yeah. As far as Trump not having Trump being kind of hamstrung, or the GOP being hamstrung by having an electoral college first strategy. And when the game changes, I expect them to change, but not much, not before that. It doesn't make sense for them to change their strategy, even if it's short-sighted. And as far as the DNC goes, electability is a pretty short-sighted slogan. It's not as though
I think we see it's a moving target.
Yeah,
like
if
they
only,
use electability as a way of saying centrist without saying centrist, right?
yeah, or they also use it in a way of reminding reminding the public who the lesser evil is.
Yeah. It's also it's saying this is the good one without saying this is the good one. Because I'll give you an
Yeah,
example of Joe Biden. Looking at the electoral college map, this is apparently drawn the ire of some. I'm just saying, when you see how the Democrats won, where the weaknesses are and everything like that, Joe Biden probably was the most electable candidate because of his strength in Pennsylvania. I'm willing to grant Biden that. Here's the thing: the media used the word electable in the context of Amy Klobuchar, which there is absolutely no data to suggest given the electoral. Like, I don't think Amy Klobuchar wins Georgia. I think Joe Biden just barely squeaked by in Georgia. I don't think Amy Klobuchar helps in Pennsylvania. She might lose it. I actually think that Amy Klobuchar probably suffers from the latent sexism drag that all female candidates suffer at a national level too. And yeah, I don't think she's electable. But the media still would use electable in the context of her because it's a proxy for the good one and the centrist.
yeah. So here's where I'm kind of at a crossroads with how I feel about this, because on one hand, it's hard to say that another candidate should have been up there instead of Joe Biden, considering the vote total he got. But I also just said that the reason the vote total was so high was because of Trump and not Biden. So I don't know.
Can I pick up something that you and I discussed when we were actually chilling out in person here over Thanksgiving for the first time in years?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and preface that by saying both Chris and I are strict, or I believe we're
Dude, I work from home. I'm basically a
yeah.
friggin' hermit at this point.
Yeah, the reason why it was even kosher to begin with is because I had COVID a month ago, and I am still with.
That's such a weird way of setting it up. Oh, it's good. It's cool because I have COVID.
Yeah, it is. But there's a golden window.
But you haven't like tested on a relentless level, and I've been in isolation.
Yeah.
So, no. Anyways, it's fine. I'm fine, everyone. Don't worry. I'm staying cool about COVID.
I didn't give Chris COVID.
No, I know, dude. I'm cleaning the house like kind of not quite at OCD levels, but like way elevated would be how I would describe my like cleaning stuff with bleach wipe status these days. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm trying to stay cool about all that stuff, but I wanted to get into this thing that you and I talked about when we were hanging out, which was looking at the election results, the popular vote total But disregarding the popular vote total, more importantly, the electoral college map and the electoral college map state by state election vote total. I'm not sure that any other candidate other than Biden could have won this election. And like, I don't like saying that.
Yeah, and
He's not the guy I supported in the primaries, and I think that's been pretty damn clear. But I don't even think my preferred candidate, love you, Liz, I don't think she wins that election.
yeah, I never knew how dirty of a word socialism still is. I never acknowledged it until these totals came in, and how they came in and how they surprised people when, the polling, in my opinion, was skewed for one very large reason. It's that socialism is a dirty word. And if you antagonize people who find it to be a dirty word just enough, you can skew polling data in ways that pollsters shouldn't be surprised by, at least at this point.
It's amazing how effective that button still is with voting Republicans. And I think it's easy for us, especially, for people who were like, who voted for Bernie Sanders in a Democratic primary at least once. It's easy for us to go like, yeah, dude, like, y'all are saying socialism is, but it's not like that. But for Republican voters, it so is still like that.
Yeah, I've been. I think, yeah, you and I have talked about how my tolerance for confronting people on the left is waning, and but I have been trying to get meta about words as often as I can on Twitter, even before defund the police. I've been trying, and that is an angle of thought that is so taboo in leftist Twitter circles. You occasionally will find some people who can have a discussion on it, but people are so timid to go down that train of thought. Even the subject of semantics, the what words do to people, how words affect people, and it's so inward looking for people who are already bought into socialism, who are already bought into defund the police. They will not allow the movement that they embrace to embrace new people who need the message in a way that they did not. It's beneath them to consider that for some people, socialism is a dirty word, and if you openly label things as a socialist agenda instead of just doing socialisty things, you lose. You instantly lose whatever capital you have going into that agenda. It's going to be marginalized based on the words that you feel that you must educate people as you embark on whatever agenda you wish. And it was revealed through the talk about socialism. And then you get into defund the police, and how defund the police is a weak slogan. And the moment you start talking about that, then you are against.
Well, I mean, this is like, I mean, this is kind of the theme of the 493 part of the episode here, which is like, it is, you have this discourse between the left and the centrists that I'm finding typical for me, unsatisfactory on kind of two different levels. And like with defund, I think it's certainly fair to say that like with defund, if you're explaining, you're losing. I go back to that time we were talking about that ridiculously long explainer thing with visual
decommodify.
Yeah, decommodify and all these like college ass words and stuff. Like if you have to explain with words that don't even exist in the dictionary, you're losing. It is a loser. But the flip of that is it has been accepted in the media as a conventional wisdom that defund the police on some level hurt the Democrats somewhere down ballot somehow. And there really isn't a good example of this. Friend of the show, Bruce Carlson, brought up Max Rose's district. It's one of the more kind of fleshed out examples I've seen of this. But even when you look into Max Rose's district in New York City, it is the Republican gerrymandered district. I mean, you know how like the Democrats kind of control New York City. They have that one little district for the Republicans. There are a lot of cops who live there, and in the last decade, 8 out of the last 10 years, a Republican has represented that district. Like, it's a Republican district. So Max Rose was sort of doomed regardless. And it's pretty easy to see that there are fundamentals in place in Max Rose's district far greater than defund to explain why he got blown out so bad. Not the least of which is he was also telling people and constituents, like, fuck you, like in those terms. He was Anthony Weiner without the charm. So like, you know, before I'm gonna say defund is what cost him, like I'm gonna start with his abrasive personality and the fact that he's in a district that, like, if he managed to win it, we should be like, Max Rose, get it, go, 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 because like they're not supposed to win that district.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, and to get a little bit back to the polling, just irrespective of that district, because I don't have too much specifically on that district, of course, but I, on one hand, it is a neat thought experiment to say, well, if Trump was going to generate 80 million votes against him anyhow, who is the most progressive person that you could push that threshold on to where the socialism label was still skeptical enough to enough people? Or does the socialism label stick on a monolith no matter who is the candidate? Or the more you actually are leaning socialist as a candidate, does the socialist label generate different outcomes? I don't know. But I
think
I'm also curious. Right. Yeah, how would Trump have, or Trump's campaign staff have encouraged him to counter using socialism against someone who is a Bernie Sanders, Liz Warren type?
I mean, so
I don't know how
here's the thing. If it's Bernie or Warren, people think that it's just merely the word socialism that dogs them, and what dogs them is something much deeper, which is that Wall Street, especially with regards to Elizabeth Warren, even more so than Sanders, it's just simply the case from like articles people I've talked to. They worry about Warren. Why? Why her over Sanders, but both of them? Yes, they're capital in like kind of Marxist terms, but they worry about capital gains taxes being raised, the changing of regulators, having the wrong person in quotes at Treasury. They worry about all those things, and that is, I mean, Trump's going to say socialism. At the same time, I think you kind of capital this time around was very ambivalent to Trump remaining in office. And you saw that in the way that they rushed behind Joe Biden's campaign in a large way. I think they're pretty happy to have Biden. I think they find a way to hold their nose and stomach Trump if it's Warren or Sanders.
So maybe it's the same message, but because the candidate is is more offensive to capital, then there's
then you
more
start
money
hearing
behind the message.
yeah, there's more money, and you start hearing about it more too. So like the flip of this is like, particularly Warren is I have a plan for it, but Bernie is, of course, Medicare for all and everything. They can message on the coronavirus and talk about the big stuff that they would do if they were president, and like actually paint a real kind of coherent alternative vision. We're fantasy booking the 2020 campaign here at this point. But I think you start hearing about socialism regardless. It's still a very powerful argument for many people, and I think it extends beyond just old white people too. I think people from Asian immigrants. If you come from a country in Asia where you lived under a communist or socialist regime, or like a client state of China, you're probably going to have a negative experience of socialism, and a negative view on socialism. If you come from the Latin American world and you've lived under like Castro and kind of Cuba as they've been struggling with food security and that sort of thing, or in Venezuela, same idea, and you escape those places because you're worried or you're just sick of the juntas and all that stuff, you've got a negative view of socialism and your family is informed by that. So like, it also hurts the Democrats in places where they'd like to be a little bit stronger. I mean, look at Florida's a really good example. There are a number of counties in Florida the Democrats used to be able to rely on that are just like gone now. That's why like I don't really consider Florida to be part of the battleground state map as much as it once was, or maybe really. It's more on the lean side of things rather than the must-win battleground state sort of thing at this point. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. So, anyways, let me kick it back to the slate here. So we've now kind of gone around the bend on that topic. I just thought we could at least bring it up. But I want to talk about, like, for as much talk about how the left has delusional ideas, how are you going to pay for that? Feinstein scolding the group of children about the Green New Deal. It's impractical. I have a really good plan. Pelosi mocking the Green New Deal as the Green Dream or whatever. The Democratic Party establishment has some really, really fantastical and weird ideas about centrism and how it works. You've got Chuck Schumer and the Baileys. For those of you who don't remember the Baileys, they're Chuck Schumer's imaginary family in his head that he's friends with. No, you don't remember this, Brian? Okay, so Chuck Schumer for the last decade.
Some things are surprising no matter how often you hear them, Chris.
No, it's so weird. It's so weird. So for the last decade, Chuck Schumer has had a family. He's written about them in a book, and he still brings them up. Like, he's brought them up steadily over the last decade, called the Baileys. The Baileys live in I'm trying to do this all from my head here. Massapequa, which I believe is in Massachusetts, or it might be in New York, but it's in one of those places. It's on the coast. But they call it, I remember this, they call it matzo pizza. It sounds like Massapequa, and they don't really know how to say the word. White people took the land from the Indians. It's funny. So they live there. George Bailey is a patriotic guy. He takes his hat off at baseball games. But his wife, she's a little bit more liberal. During the 2016 election, George voted for Trump, but she voted for Hillary. A little bit of a rift there among the Baileys. He has this whole imaginary family in his head that he has been like, it's like a game of The Sims that he's been running for 10 years straight. And he has come to know these people intimately. This is the matrix with which he understands centrism. He literally asks, what would the Baileys say about that? Do you have something like that?
No.
Oh.
My first inclination is to know, or to ask Sean Frieder, the people as heuristics, what he thinks of imaginary people as
heuristics. It's taking people as heuristics and moving it to this whole new meta level where it's like, what if your heuristic is yourself? Yeah.
It's
I have this like stock joke that I like to use of I really look up to me. This is like I look to myself for social cues.
oh man,
Oh man, yeah, no, the
myself
Bailey's
and
thing.
Snuffleupagus.
It's
Yeah,
so weird. Yeah. All right. And then we have like, and this is a little bit more recent, like the last month here. James Clyburn contending that he believed that an African American female would not face the same challenges in a Supreme Court nomination confirmation that Merrick Garland did if it was to happen now. Like, let's say Justice Breyer steps down, a fairly likely event here in the next administration. Um, Clyburn contends that an African American female would have an easier time than Merrick Garland, a white boomer male.
great. That's
These are the centrists who call themselves realists. I'm going at this specifically because they make these outlandish claims, and you're not allowed to mock them because they're the quote unquote serious people. But like, this is nutty. I think we all know this to be true.
I man,
Merrick Garland, Republicans literally said, "Hey, pick Merrick Garland, and we'll have hearings for him." And then they pulled the football out from Obama. Why would this unnamed African American female Supreme Court nominee not face a at least as bad fate?
I guess if you're looking at this in some sort of Aikido standpoint, where Republicans don't know how to confront people, if
Oh, they'll be scared of the identity stuff. Yeah, that's what the Republicans.
based on identity politics.
Yeah, they care about that.
But I don't think that's what he's saying at all.
I know. I honestly, I've looked at this quote in context. I've heard it in context. I don't understand I don't understand the thought process. It's just a thing that an 80-year-old man says that gets unchallenged because he's one of the serious people. But it's weird. It's weird, and it doesn't scan with like even kind of a lazy read of American politics. You don't have to be hosting a show. You could just be someone who listens to podcasts and go, that doesn't sound right. And then we get into the of course Joe Biden's sustained contention that Republicans were going to come to their senses after Trump lost the election, which I hope at least some of the rank and file Democrats are getting disabused of, like the Democratic voters. But this is still very much an axiomatic wisdom among many centrist and beltway types that Joe Biden's going to somehow, they don't even say come to their senses anymore. They say unite the country. And the implication there in unite the country is like hug the Trumpy people until they love it. Like, does that sound like a real thing?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that there's going to be required some turning away from antagonism in order for there to be some healing of the schism, for there to at least be some scar tissue laid down,
Are we talking about with the Trump people? We're talking about between the left and the Democratic establishment here.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm talking about the Trump people, I guess.
Don't they have to put down the sword? Doesn't it really start with them?
It should, but does it? I mean,
like, I think what you're describing there is a much more healthy dynamic between like the left in quotes here and the Democratic Party establishment. Like, that makes sense. Like, both of them have to stop antagonizing each other. It's not good. It's not good for the left, Red Rose, Twitter, whatever you want to call them. The Chapo people who came up with this whole idea of like dragging people, they didn't come up with it, but they really popularized it. It's not actually good to drag the cocktail circuit people on a regular basis because it makes it fun for the cocktail circuit to play Own the Libs only on you, who they
The
think
power
are the
side.
libs. Yeah, right. They're playing on, like, the left thinks they're the only ones playing Own the Libs, but to the Dem establishment, y'all are the libs and they're owning you. You're the more liberal of the two. They're owning the libs. Like, it is fun, but it's not fun if you're on the receiving end of it, and like that, therein lies the rub.
To get back to the Trump folks,
Now on the Trump folks side.
I have a hard time divorcing myself from the idea that they should be considered differently than cult victims. And I know this is not a traditional cult, but there's a point where fascism has such a grip on you that at some point you're more of a victim than a participant. And I'm not saying as a entirety they are all. There's a spectrum.
Oh no, I'll run with this, but I'll counter with this. I agree, it's like a cult, but the cult is Scientology. And these people are like the people who Miscavige mobilizes to go after the heretics. So they are both victims and also very much victimizers and willing participants inside of a victimizer structure. They're taking the trade-off of being a victim in exchange for the privilege of being a victimizer.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a very natural cycle of things in
Right,
the
yeah.
And one that requires someone at the top to orchestrate it. And it requires, I don't know if willful ignorance is the right direction, but there's a point where you're no longer in control of recognizing the landscape. You've been so immersed in a cultish environment that and especially compounding that with
man, you get into the QAnon stuff, right?
Like get into the QAnon, and then you get into the psychological power of fake news. You get into how easy it is to fake an image. You can
the
make
fact
anybody
that, like,
say
news
anything.
preference, One American News Network becoming so popular overnight, as opposed to Fox, and why did Republicans switch over to One American News Network? It's not because they were doing better news. It's because they were saying the narrative. The fact that, like, this political party and political parties throughout time, the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, all these different parties are on a spectrum. It's not like binary, you're not on or off. But the Republican Party right now, like conservatism, between the QAnon stuff and One American News Network, Newsmax, all of these things, it's all pointing in a very culty direction, a very Scientology direction.
Yeah, do you mind giving me your 2 cents on Newsmax specifically? Because I feel like it, momentum-wise, it crept up on me in ways that I feel like I've been seeing One American News kind of telegraphed for a little bit as far as their trajectory. Maybe Newsmax just wasn't on my radar, but where do you see those two different audiences? Boy, that looked like 17 fingers there.
You got to take advantage of the grainy video.
Where do you see these two? Why do you see the need to have these two different networks, and how are they serving the entirety of the Trump constituency? Are they serving differently?
All right. So, One American News Network is more recent than Newsmax, and so the bifurcation, they're not really competitors. If anything, I expect them to merge at some point. So you'll see like a One America Newsmax omnibus thing, perhaps under the Trump umbrella, perhaps owned by one of the scions of Trump. I think there's there was some exploration of doing that earlier in the year. I think that that's probably only going to be accelerated. And I think what you were seeing with Voice of America and Michael Pack over there, that also intersects with this. Like Trump and Trump TV, Trump media, if you will, I think is part of it. So I don't like they're not really competing against one another. It's interesting about Newsmax though. Going back to Chris's old days, closed captioning. There was a certain network that had green as a primary color and was funded by the Russian government. What could it be? Wow. Ooh, figure it out. But Newsmax personnel routinely appeared on that network that I used to caption on a regular basis. And that's always been kind of in the back of my head. That in addition to being even kookier than Fox, the Newsmax people and everything like that's part of like they're way cool. They're way cool with the Russian state-funded media operation. I'm not saying with any certitude that I could say that this person's on the take or that person's on the take or whatever. I'm just saying like they are not ambivalent to it. They're kind of like, well, it's a cool thing. It's a place to work. That's a worldview. That's a worldview in and of itself.
That's a place to work.
It's a place to work. No, I mean, dude, but there's a serious talent share between that network that I must not name and Newsmax. Whenever they would do like liberal versus conservative panels, the conservative almost always was coming from Newsmax. There's a guy, I was gonna say Stephen Malkmus, but he's the fucking frontman of Pavement. It was not the front man of Pavement. Oh God, what's his name? I don't remember, but there was some Mulk guy. Great segue there, Chris. Anyways, other stupid stuff the center has said. Chuck Schumer is like a real font for this dumb shit, where he was saying that like he was openly slagging Raphael Warnock in a call this week. About not thrilled about him on the runoffs. He'd rather have Stacey Abrams. Like, why put this stuff out in the open? Because no one can challenge it, because you're not allowed to actually challenge it. To kind of bring it back here to the show slate, so it kind of reached like a peak for me this week with this article from Politico called "The Left's Stupid Second Guessing of Biden." The heading is obviously clickbait, and the subtext on this is, it's possible many people making the arguments against potential Biden appointees don't know what they are arguing. They know not what they do, Brian. It's biblical shit. We're in that time of year here. So who wrote this piece of shit? John F. Harris. Who is that? He's the founding editor of Politico. So when I'm singling this guy out, and I'm about to talk about Neera Tanden at length here, this isn't really about Neera Tanden, and this is not even so much about this specific article. It's about this guy, John F. Harris. It's about establishment thinking and how you can get away with writing really dumb shit without having it get challenged. This article has a bunch, I could do pull quotes all day on it, but the crux of what I want to argue against, because it's such a flimsy and bad argument, this is it. Quote, there is no serious argument that Tanden, like Rahm Emanuel, is not a committed lifelong progressive. Now, part of me wants to go the defense rests by saying, yeah, no, Neera Tanden is as progressive as Rahm Emanuel. Yes, I agree. You're right. We're just not really in agreement as to how progressive Rahm Emanuel is. Coolest thing you ever do is protest those neo-Nazis. But covering up the murder of Laquan McDonald and overseeing a whole bunch of police brutality while the mayor of Chicago and doing a piss-poor job as the mayor of Chicago, how progressive are you really, Rahm? But you can make these arguments you can make these arguments and not get challenged. So I want to challenge the argument here. I want to challenge Mr. John F. Harris, the founding editor of Politico, on this premise that there is no serious argument that Tanden is not a committed lifelong progressive. I'll give you a few examples here. This one came from the New Republic, but these are all like mostly quotes. Like the article, I wanted to do this in a way where the article and who wrote it's way less relevant than the actual quote here. Here's Neera Tanden talking about Zephyr Teachout. I need Zephyr to not be a pain in the ass to Hillary. Do you think she would endorse Bernie? Do you have her contact info? And then this was during the 2016 campaign. Tanden then flagged John Podesta in the exchange, and then advised the campaign to contact Kirsten Gillibrand to get Zephyr Teachout in line. So there's Neera Tanden trying to cudgel a progressive, something you would definitely expect a committed lifelong progressive to do. Cudgel the person Zephyr Teachout into supporting the less progressive of the two candidates. Another thing you might expect a committed lifelong progressive to do is stage an intervention for the head of the NAACP because his politics were not appropriately in line with the Democratic Party. That's like a lifelong progressive sort of thing to do. Reading from the article here, in a January email, these are from the Podesta emails, which were hacked by Russia. I'm aware of all that. Podesta asked Tanden to stage, quote, an intervention for Jealous. Tanden seemingly tried, but it didn't work. In March, she wrote to Podesta, I got into it with Ben Jealous last night, and he was all obsessed with how Hillary hasn't condemned Rahm Emanuel, a true progressive. Why didn't Ben Jealous recognize that Rahm Emanuel is a true progressive? I'm sure you guys were all over this for the debate, but I just thought I would send in that they may well go there for the debate. My recommendation is to separate big time. Here, Neera Tanden figured out that Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, who is coming under fire for covering up police brutality against African Americans, was toxic and did tell John Podesta to steer clear. So this is kind of a double whammy here for me. Why does Neera Tanden think that Rahm Emanuel's not very progressive? And why is Neera Tanden attacking the head of the NAACP for being insufficiently with the Democratic Party because he doesn't like Rahm Emanuel, who she thinks is politically hazardous here? The answer here is pretty simple, John F. Harris. It's because it doesn't make any sense. It's because she's not very progressive. I'm not yelling at you, Brian. I'm yelling at John F. Harris. I wanted to make that clear.
For once.
Yeah. Are you talking about that I just yell and I don't add clarity to it, or that I'm not yelling at you?
I don't really know where I was going with that. I was just
no, it's fine.
poking at you there.
No, it's fine. No, it's not. I'm a big guy. I'm resilient. I'm strong. Other progressive things that Neera Tanden has done. Tanden has opposed Hillary Clinton coming out in favor of reinstating Glass-Steagall, just basically because she thought it was a good way to position Clinton against Sanders to get capital on the line. To read from the email here, she being Hillary Clinton, Hillary's not conceding that repealing Glass-Steagall was responsible for the financial crisis, but her openness to keeping that repealed would be better than a hard and fast position that puts her on the bank side of the ledger. Essentially, she wants to kind of keep that door friendly for the big Wall Street money here. Jacobin, a source I don't read a lot from, but like really just has her dead to rights on this stuff. And this is from C-SPAN, wrote on this. So Neera Tanden in February 2012 goes on, and this is around the time I talked about this on Radio Bernie. This is around the time where there was like a bipartisan commission to cut Social Security and other entitlements. There was a talk about chain CPI. Sanders came out, and that's part of what prompted Bernie to consider maybe primarying Barack Obama and then deciding against it. But that was a big part of this. Tanden and the Center for American Progress were big advocates for some grand bargain, cut the budget sort of thing. And this is, I mean, again, why progressives are so upset about her going to the OMB, where Mick Mulvaney is, the guy who oversees the budget, is because someone who has bad sensibilities when it comes to the budget, Mick Mulvaney wants to cut Social Security. Neera Tanden does as well. Neera Tanden goes, she explained her views in February 12th C-SPAN interview and was asked by a caller about entitlement reform. And she named Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid as targets for possible cuts, noting that the president has $300 million in his budget in cuts in Medicare, and that comes on top of the cuts in Medicare for the Affordable Care Act. So he has specific cuts in the budget in Medicare, and they've had savings in Medicaid in the past. So the question is, if we're going to have to address long-term deficit reduction, we need to put entitlements on the table as well as taxes. And then Tanden went on to be more explicit about this. We should have savings, just putting that in parentheticals here, is cuts on entitlements. And the Center for American Progress, the think tank that she headed, has put forward ideas on proposals to reform the beneficiary structure of Social Security. Some of our progressive allies aren't as excited about that as we are. It's kind of a double whammy here again, John. Why would she say that? Why would progressives think she's less excited? And Anna, by the way, why would she say ally? Allies, like I'm an ally of the LGBTQ community. I'm assuming you are too. You know why we say that is because we are not part of that community, but we support them. That's what an ally is. An ally, like France, is an ally of the United States. Why? Because they're not part of the United States. They're friends with it. They're adjacent to it. Tanden describes herself as an ally and describes progressives as an ally, as in not her. My fellow progressives is how you might describe yourself if you are a real progressive. Again, I know I'm spelling this out in painstaking ways for some people here. John Harris could have Googled any of this. And any establishment person could have Googled any of this. And I've seen so many people incredulously argue on Twitter this week that there's just simply no evidence textually to support the idea that Neera Tanden's anything other than a progressive. And yet a careful analysis of her own words suggests that she doesn't even view herself as a progressive, even when she was at the Center for American Progress. Progress, yes. Progressive, no. She doesn't view it of that. Reading one more quote from this. Talking again about those entitlements. We think that those are legitimate ideas that need to be part of a proposal where everyone's at the table. We don't just ask middle-class Americans to sacrifice. We ask all Americans. Which, in the context of this, is literally like we're asking the poor to pull out their coffers too. The poor of America, how they've been getting it so good for so long. She later, of course, backed away from CPI, and she has this tendency of doing, for example, she zapped a whole bunch of negative tweets about Susan Collins. I don't know if you saw that, but she now she needs Collins' vote. She zapped all of that. She backed off of CPI. I was like, oh no, I don't change price index, consumer price index. No. I what name so? So she's not very progressive on the policy front. But here's the thing. She's going into management, and for a long time, Brian, men have dominated management structures across business. We know this. And it's still very much a problem today. Obviously, there's actually more women than men in America. It's 52% to 48%. And yet, 7 out of 10 bosses, I think it's even a little bit more than that, are men. So it would be really good to have more women in higher positions of leadership. So maybe she kind of sucks on the politics side of it, but she's a good boss. And frankly, on the changing the culture in the office thing, she might be better at that, right? Maybe. Why not? Maybe John F. Harris has a point. I'm sure he did his homework into this. Maybe that's what he's talking about when he's saying that there's no serious case she's not progressive. Oh, shit. Tanden revealed the name of an anonymous staffer at the Center for American Progress who came forward as the victim of sexual harassment at an all-hands meeting. So she outed this person to the entire staff. The meeting followed an article published on BuzzFeed that reported a culture of sexual harassment and retaliation against those who reported incidences at the Center for American Progress. In a statement provided to BuzzFeed News, the CAP spokesperson claimed that Tanden unintentionally said the complainant's first name and then immediately and profusely apologized for it. So she was like, and we all know we don't want stuff like this happening to people like Larry. Larry's a good person. Oh, shit, Larry. I am so sorry. Larry, God, Jesus, Larry, I'm so sorry, Larry. I hope you, yeah.
Speaking of that, also, whenever you black out a name that ends in S and it's about 4 characters long and there's an apostrophe S at the end. Yeah, it's sort of like that with Larry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but you know, like, okay, so that's not great. It's got a little bit of Michael Scott energy. And like, she got a little bit of Michael Scott energy going on in a lot of different places here, especially online and stuff. As the president, and the chief executive officer, I can't stress that enough, because this culture that sucked at the office she worked at, she oversaw it. So she's a bad boss. She's going into the administrative state, and she has not proven herself to be an effective administrator. And we, as Democratic voters, as people who, in an ideal world, would support the Progressive Party, if the Democratic Party was really kind of filling that niche the right way, should not be tolerant of failing upwards just because someone can give us a nice little, like, try hard story about their youth, or, you know, like, oh, they went through the hardest of hard times. Like, if you went through the hardest of hard times, but over the last decade, you've proven yourself to be a pretty much professional failure, you don't deserve a promotion. I hope that you find success, but you should not find success just because you fail. She is a failure. But we'll go on a little bit more. Maybe she's really progressive. I'm losing. My hope is waning here. So at one point, someone criticized Hillary Clinton. Unthinkable. And this guy Fayez Shakir interviewed Hillary Clinton, and the interview asked some unfair questions. The question was about the Iraq War, which Hillary Clinton had supported, and Hillary Clinton didn't want to be asked about. After that interview, Neera Tanden went up to Fayez Shakir and slugged him, hit him. When confronted on that, she goes, "Oh, I didn't slug him. I pushed him." A totally highly normal thing for a campaign official to do. As we remember, when everyone applauded Greg Gianforte, he also got promoted and failed upward. I know. That's sort of the point. If you think Greg Gianforte out there when he beat up that reporter from The Guardian shouldn't have failed upward, calibrate that against how you feel about Neera Tanden. And then one last piece on this. Think Progress. You might remember Think Progress, and they still sort of are like out there kind of as a ghost, but they're not the thing that they once were. Why not? Because Neera Tanden shut it down after the writers that Think Progress tried to unionize, citing that it was no longer profitable now that the writers were trying to unionize. So rather than making the organization profitable for the people she was employing and that she was managing, she instead, like a true progressive, sided with capital and said, "Oh, there's just no room for the inn. I can't fix this. I'm going to have to go on to continued career success and lock all you bastards out in the cold." So, John, on that alone, I think maybe you can look at those and go, maybe there is a serious argument that Tanden, like Rahm Emanuel, is not a, quote, committed lifelong progressive. And then the last piece of evidence, also from the WikiLeaks emails here, is this is really an outrageous email where she insinuates that we should intervene in Libya, an operation that did not go well, an operation that progressives did not support, not that I'm aware of, I was not calling for regime change in Libya back in the day. I was strongly against actually doing anything in Libya, and it went pretty badly. Long story short, but she was saying we should do this, and we should have the Libyans pay for it with the oil. Very Trumpy in its energy here. Here's her exact words: "We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. If we want to continue to engage in the world, gestures like having oil-rich countries partially pay us back doesn't seem crazy to me. Or do we prefer cuts to Head Start or WIC or Medicaid? Because we live in deficit politics, and that is what is happening and what will be happening even more." And I want to stop on that last sentence there, or that last paragraph there. Or do we prefer cuts to Head Start or WIC or Medicaid? She advocates for those. I'm, you know this. We just talked about it, but it drives me up a fucking wall because again, a cursory Google search, John F. Harris, founding editor of Politico, guy who won't publish anything I write, guy. John, a cursory read of this stuff would tell you that yes, there is an argument, a serious argument, that Neera Tanden is maybe even on the liberal side of the neoconservative wing of politics. She is not a neocon on the social stuff, but when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to budget stuff, this whole we live in deficit politics stuff, we live in deficit politics puts you on the Republican side of the economic political debate spectrum. There is an argument, a serious argument, for anyone who wants to listen to it and look into it, that Neera Tanden is not a committed lifelong progressive. And at that, the defense now rests. Neera Tanden, owned. John F. Harris, owned. Money. Give me the money. Give me the money. Patreon.com/GWATG.
Okay, I'm glad you were asking the people and not me.
Was that just I like to think of it as an and or. You can get into it. Give me the money. Give me the money. No? All right. No.
I got a cookie for you.
Yeah. Oh, cash at me. You don't even have to push it through the screen anymore. You can cash at me.
That used to work. You could just push it through the. Never mind.
Yeah, it did. But in 2008,
you make me forget.
The old laptops, the old flip phones, you could do that.
Oh, but that memory escapes me.
Yeah, tech's different now.
So, I want to touch on this in a matter of power versus public sentiment later. So whenever I forget to do that, you can remind me.
Do you have anything to add on to the Neera Tanden dog pile? Because
yes, I do.
Go ahead, because I've fucking hated this woman for 10 years. She really is a shitty person. The left. This is not the left problem. She really is a bad person.
Whenever you see a person like this being stood up for, we get to see what happens downriver of Neera Tanden. And she is willing to accept a lot of flack. And she somehow processes that flack and still remains an organism in DC, a living organism. So that tells me that she is able to clean up stuff above her that makes it worth excusing her. And the emails that we're getting are kind of lateral or down emails, whereas the emails we don't see are the emails sent from above her to her, asking her to tackle A, B, and C. And so based on everything we do know and how progressive she isn't, and how they're willing to sell her in this framing uh, for reasons that can't be explained. The only conclusion I can come up with is she cleans up a lot of things that we have never known about.
I think she's really good on the campaign operational level. Like policy wise, she's basically fucking useless as a human being. I like even
or she knows things. I don't know what else to say.
Well, no, like the policies she's advancing, like they're not just policies I'm ideologically opposed to. Like the Libya pay for the oil thing, it's stupid. Like that to if you actually read that email, and what's important about that last one, well, okay, that's actually with Fayyaz Shakir, so that is an interview back and forth here. But that's still like kind of like a professional, like officially sort of argument, and it's a dumb one. Like people get that wars cost money. Everyone, especially around the year 2010, clearly associated the skyrocketing national debt with the bungling occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan. Even Republicans did. They didn't like talking about it, but like the Tea Party happened because it was a lie. They could like you can't ignore the big billboard that keeps going up. Like, or the number's the fucking number. How real is the number is how real the number is, like, in like real dollars or whatever. But like it went from, I'm making a number up here, like $5 trillion of national debt to $10 trillion in national debt. That might actually be kind of close to what it was. But it's like an unresolvable amount. To that point, like the deficit hawking is going to be extraordinarily disingenuous this time around, even more so than last time around. They aren't going to be wrong when they point at the actual deficit and how the debt has gotten like really almost hockey stick like, and like there probably is a breaking point. I don't know what that is. But they'll have a better argument this time around. It's going to be a disingenuous as fuck one though. But like to go back to Tanden here, Tanden makes these arguments. They're not even smart arguments. Even we chain Social Security to CPI thing. Yes, you successfully cut Social Security. Sure. But you haven't actually solved the deficit problem, let alone if you don't solve the deficit problem, you're actually forever growing out the debt problem. But like, chaining Social Security to CPI doesn't actually resolve the federal deficit. In order to do that, you have to repeal the Bush tax cuts.
If you're Neera Tanden, do you have to solve the debt, or do you have to work towards solving problems, or do you have to work towards stopping the questioning?
Yeah, I know. So this is Tanden. Tanden, to me, like, she's a political apparatchik. And I think that's the other thing why I really am opposed to her as an administrator. When I think about administrators, and I think one thing that's changed about me is I'm a little less cynical about the administrative state. There are now good administrators and bad administrators, as I kind of get it. And good administrators are people like Anthony Fauci. Someone who, like, he actually didn't want to get promoted further into a more prominent position inside of Biden's team. Does not want to be political at all, and actually cares about the specific bureau that he's tasked with because he has specific expertise specific to that bureau. I want the mining guy or the rocks or geology person to be the kid who grew up obsessed with friggin' earthquakes. That's all I thought about. And that's all they ever care about. They don't really give a shit about politics or if it's Democrat or Republican in office because they want to study fucking earthquakes. That's a good administrator. Neera Tanden's a bad administrator because the only thing she cares about is who is in office. And she doesn't have a serious budgetary vision. And that's not really where she was at a think tank that was about policy, but it wasn't really about policy. Like all those think tanks, they're about basically giving people a paycheck. It's a way of like paying someone to be on team conservative or on team liberal or on team Democrat.
So is there anyone specific other than Biden that owed Neera Tanden a solid?
Oh, Hillary. And really
But
like
I mean, maybe this is more. Maybe this is bigger than the Biden campaign. You're just talking about the DNC in general, but it seems to be like I guess whenever I had a little shift in this was boy, when did this come out? In 2015 or 2016, when it was revealed Obama asked Biden not to run in 2016. Just knowing that those sorts of arrangements were put into place, I
think Neera's really good at doing that stuff, and I think powerful people like Neera because Neera just fucking does it. And I think on another level, so she's zealous, and she's also stupid enough to like not question it. Like she makes that Libya argument with like a brazen boldness that you have to kind of admire. Like I think she believes it. I think she thinks it's gonna work.
If her strength isn't her ideas, then her strength must be her connections. So who is Neera Tanden connected to that other people are not? Like
the Obama machine, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, she is deep in it.
Is she that unique in that respect?
Let's like
we
could Wikipedia her real quick. I can do the Joe Rogan thing where they Wikipedia one thing every episode in an attempt to suggest that they have an interest in. She's already being listed as a government official. God help me. She's not a government official. She does nothing right now. All right, so she worked in the 2008 Obama campaign. But before that, she worked with the Clintons. So this is a person who's been doing this for 20 years. In 1999, she was the deputy campaign manager to Hillary Clinton in the Senate campaign to New York. Then she was also part of Hillary's campaign in 2008. She got upset about that's when she punched Fayez Shakir. She was an unpaid advisor to the 2016 primary campaign to Hillary Clinton. And as you saw, she was very active. She was part of Obama's general election team, and was the domestic policy director for his successful general election campaign. Lord knows Obama had a robust domestic policy. She was in the Obama administration as the senior advisor to Kathleen Sebelius in the Health and Human Services Department, which is to say a completely separate department. She helped to craft the administration's Affordable Care Act. What does that mean in this case when we know that Max Baucus wrote on a lot of it? She's been described as a key architect of the Affordable Care Act. So there you go. I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then, it goes back to 2003 again. She was a founding member of the Center for American Progress. So she's been positioning herself for this for 20 years. Neera Tanden is 50 years old. So she's been doing this since she was our age. She's a career striver, dude, and a poster made good now.
So to get back to the what is the wonderful gentleman's name from Politico who wrote this?
John F. Harris. He's the founding editor of Politico, a thought maker.
We can maybe take his op-ed as more of a mandate. In other words, whenever someone like this is calling her progressive, in the spectrum of political considerations in DC, you have the right, and I'm not going to segment them, but then you have the liberal center, you have the progressives, and then you have who everyone to the center on right would label socialists. Okay, the Justice Democrats are labeled socialist.
Oh yeah, they'd be
by,
socialist.
Yeah, they would be socialist. When we're thinking of the spectrum of political considerations in the country, those are progressives. The people that would be called socialists are actually progressives, and the socialists are nowhere to be found.
Yeah, unless you have a chapter of DSA that's vibrant in your locale.
Right. Yeah. So this is just to acclimate what we're really talking about here. So what this joker is saying in this Politico article is that when you think progressive, what you have to think is how far anything can travel and get out of here alive. And so what he is saying with this mandate is the most progressive thing that will come out of Congress or Biden or anything here is something to the spectrum of Neera Tanden.
Yes.
And he's using the term inappropriately, but he's saying progressive in the sense that if you want the needle to move, she is the extension of how far it will move and get out of here alive.
Oh, man. Okay. If he was making that argument, that is a much trickier argument for me to rebut against.
No,
but if he made that argument, we don't have an episode here today.
That's why I'm saying this was an unspoken mandate. He's telling you like it is by using words that don't really align with reality.
Yeah, no, he's definitely setting the politics of the possible in a normative way with kind of like we were saying earlier, like when people say electable and it's a proxy for good and like the other one's the edgy candidate or whatever. It's a normative thing. But if he was making the argument that among the politics of possible progressive outcomes, Tanden sits on the furthest wing of what can credibly be possibly expected right now. That is a bleak assessment, and I don't like it, but I can't argue against that one nearly as forcibly as his argument, which was, again, that there is. I'll read the exact quote, because if I'm going to murder someone, I would like to murder them with their own word. There is no serious argument that Tanden ... is not a committed lifelong progressive. And in that sense, so we're talking about the spectrum of life. We're talking about not what is possible in a contextual moment to moment sort of thing, but an objective on a left-right spectrum. Tanden is on the left. That argument sucks, but your argument's more subtle and I think much more interesting and one I'm far more receptive to.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that's exactly the argument he's making, but I am saying that the outcome of saying something like that is, if you will, it becomes so in a sense. Absolutely. Of he's redefining the words just like Trump redefined socialism, or Trump is using a not scary word in a scary way, and this guy is using the word progressive not to scare people away, but to tell you that what progressive means is how far something can travel and still be alive, as far as something that comes out of Congress. And that's not really what progressive means.
No.
But that's what he's telling you it means. And in a sense, if, just as a thought experiment here, let's say Neera Tanden stays where she is, like we know she will. If something were to arise, if, for instance, a decent political movement happened in the street that actually warranted it's a do or die moment for people in the establishment to react, all of a sudden Neera Tanden is going to be a completely different animal in Congress.
She is going to be an attack dog. She is going to go after the
But as long as it pays off to call socialism a dirty word, she's not going to realign herself for in exchange for nothing. She's only going to move in a direction when she has to. I mean, we talk about like, how do you push Biden? So much for pushing Biden left. Well, no, the way you push Biden left is doing something meaningful in the streets, and that's about it right now.
Yes.
So, and as long as you can't generate a movement in the streets, moving him left is not going to happen.
The other thing is you clobber him in primary challenges. Yeah, it's going to be clobbering him in Democratic primaries the next time around for the House of Representatives so that incumbents start losing their seats. And then a big on the Capitol D.C. protest march for a discrete individual thing. Because, like, especially with Biden, you're not, if you show up with Green New Deal, he ain't going to give you shit. I'm just being real. I'm not saying, or even if you show up with Medicare for All, you need to show up with, like, I want, gun reform or whatever. And, like, that might get the problem solver caucus to move on that.
No, I think what they're going to do is they're going to leverage canceling student loans for everything they can, because that doesn't have to go through Congress. And so it's more of a card that they have in their
it's so crazy that he wants to go with that instead of like descheduling weed. Like there are like,
now, would that also be a signature?
Like, that's almost all executive branch stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he can move that off of Schedule 1. He can have the AG basically say we're dropping all drug prosecutions. Like, you can effectively stop enforcing the marijuana laws.
Third Way has always been more of a anti-Medicare for All agency than an anti-student loan agency. And I think that the reason you're not going to see that is because decriminalizing marijuana leads to negative returns in the opioid industry, and canceling student debt doesn't.
I mean, and Joe Manchin, I mean, like, this is the weirdest and worst thing about Joe Manchin being this power broker. Joe Manchin's daughter is like deep in the pharmaceutical industry, so there's gonna be one guy in Washington who's gonna,
and who is everyone pivoting around right now? Who wants to make
him and Romney? Him and Romney. Brian, we got rid of Trump, but it's like I touched the monkey's paw, because like the most powerful people in Washington are like a cast of ghouls who I dislike, none of whom I dislike anywhere near the same level of intensity as Donald Trump, any of whom I would accept as president any day of the week before Donald Trump, even Mitt Romney. But a cast of ghouls is like who are now the power broker. It's like a panel, like an oligarchy of ghouls, an oligarchy.
Yeah, that was just pretty good. I'm gonna.
It
was on the fly.
No, I appreciate that, but it took me like 2 or 3 passes to get there.
We'll workshop it.
You gotta land on your feet the first time.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm a hard critic on myself, but I think it's important. Being punchy is good.
Matter.
Yeah, being punchy is good, but like in comedy, timing is everything.
I had to lay out after that.
Time is everything. I was waiting for you to say it so I could step on you.
Yeah, Homer Simpson's a man of what was the thing? He went to a class to increase his vocabulary. Am I losing you on that one?
Is this the episode where he decides he's going to change his name to Max Power?
No,
I remember some of the
Max Powers.
The Max Power episode's a great one. The name I like the most of his other failed names is Rembrandt Q. Einstein.
Yes. No, this wasn't really consequential to the episode. He just said that he said something to the effect of I just took a class on increasing your vocabulary and it's working really, really, really good.
That's a good joke. That's a good joke. I mean, I like jokes like that. All right. I don't know if I have anything else here. I think we've got a full episode of Don't Worry About the Government out of this. I know some people wanted to hear me go off on Neera Tanden, so hopefully I scratched that itch, but like in a more substantive way of illustrating a bigger point here about what you will be seeing from Democratic friendly commentary in the coming months. I mean, the other thing you'll hear is, "Oh, let's not talk about this now. We just need to get past the inauguration, or we just need to get past the first 100 days. So we just need to get past the midterms." Like, there's gonna be the kick the can down the road thing, but the other one's gonna be the centrist scolding, the explaining of why we can't have nice things, and oh, these leftists are so out to lunch, and the leftists are the ones who are really not operating in the world as it actually is. And I wanted to illustrate here on this episode at length the several different ways, from Schumer to Clyburn to Joe Biden's repeated assertion that everyone was going to come to their senses after the 2020 election. And like, Trump's going to run again. Trump's not going away after the inauguration day. He's still trying to steal the election. He's convinced more than half of the Republican Party that the election was not legitimate and that he was fucked out of it. They're not coming to their senses. And this whole thing about, oh, it's the left who are out to lunch here. Maybe it's not the left who are being stupid and they don't know what they're arguing. Maybe, John F. Harris, it's the center who don't know what they're arguing for. And if they did, I'd like to give them credit and say that if they knew who Neera Tanden was, they would know she's not progressive. Or I guess if I wasn't giving them credit, I would say they know exactly who Neera Tanden is, and it's pretty disingenuous to gaslight people into thinking she's something she's not.
Well, when you're the center and you can make or break the election whichever way you wish, whenever you're the center and you have an abundance of power that you don't deserve, you can call these shots, and that's an unfortunate reality for people who want something to change. But
Man, I'll tell you, there's one paragraph here in this John Harris article that stung because I hate his tone, obviously, but he's basically right here. I'll read it. If the Democratic left doesn't want a president who would be tempted to appoint the likes of Ricchetti, Emanuel, or Reid, the best option would have been to win the nomination and the general election for someone like Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, who wouldn't want that crowd working for them and whom that crowd wouldn't want to work. Oh, by the way, like, to argue this at the back end of this article when you touted Rahm Emanuel as a real progressive, like, what the fuck are you doing here, John? You know the game you're playing. Sanders and Warren. Yeah, go ahead.
If you are still trying to sell the nation on Neera Tanden, does the sell seems to be helped by McConnell opposing her to some degree?
Yeah, right. So if any, and like to the original poll quote that I had at the beginning of this, of the rank and file Democrats really embracing this negative partisanship argument, I think to the dopey center, the whole, well, the left doesn't like it and the right doesn't like it, if I'm pissing everybody off, I must be doing something right. It has the same sort of appeal as like the old stupid argument of like, I'm not racist, I'm an equal opportunity offender. People really believe that shit though. People really like, they don't think too hard on it. You're talking about the below average intelligence thing on the pre-show here. Like, people will just say that stuff, or like, and the same way, like, now it's been pushed back against enough. But like, I don't see race was like a total thing. From like the year 1988 to about 2004, people were saying that shit with no pushback. Like, I'm colorblind, man. I don't see race. It's like kind of like I'm cool, man. I'm cool, man. You can just say it. Yeah, no. it is that paragraph stung. He is right. But he's also then conceding in that paragraph that when he says that Sanders and Elizabeth Warren wouldn't want that crowd working for them, that these are not people who committed lifelong progressives view as progressives, unless you're arguing in a serious way that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are not people who would fit the definition and purview of committed lifelong progressives, or at least committed progressives in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and we're once again revisited by the fact that, where during the primary,
many
Elizabeth
committed
Warren was characterized as just as centrist
insufficiently
as anyone.
progressive. Yeah, right.
And
so then where would that put
have,
Neera Tanden?
Now we have Neera Tanden with that label, and the opposition towards both of them seems to be rather equal as far as the instant reaction from the Twitter sphere.
That actually gets to another good point. If Biden had wanted to, and he had any interest in actually working with Elizabeth Warren, so I guess I can kind of like put a spear in the Warren conspiracy here at the same time, and kind of put a spear into Biden too, and also do the dopey attacks on like the left on Warren here. But one of the things that was available to Biden by virtue of all of the dopey attacks of the left on Elizabeth Warren was the fact that they could make this triangulation argument that the left and Mick Mulvaney hates Elizabeth Warren. If Biden and the Democrats actually liked Elizabeth Warren and wanted to help her out and weren't trying to fucking sabotage her, which they were, they never entertained that for a second. What'd you get instead? That facile, no, we need her in the Senate argument. Never for a second was it entertained that, well, you know, if the left and Mick Mulvaney don't like her, she's our gal. But the left had actually opened up that option for Joe Biden, and he didn't take it. So that tells you everything you need to know about Joe Biden. Tells you everything you really need to know about Elizabeth Warren in relationship to the Democratic Party and Joe Biden as well. She's not in great standing. And it also kind of tells you a little bit about Valence and stuff. And was she doing an inside job and a favor to Joe Biden? I mean, if Elizabeth Warren was doing a favor to Joe Biden, she hasn't gotten fucking shit all for it.
Right. And that's the other that was maybe going around about 2 weeks ago, where it was let's laugh at Elizabeth Warren about how she sold out but never got anything out of it. And that's presuming that
it's certainly not following Occam's razor, right? Like, yeah. Is that the most likely version of events?
If you follow that train of thought, and if you really do think Elizabeth Warren isn't a progressive, then I suppose you owe Simone Sanders a debt of gratitude for keeping another centrist off Biden's team. I don't know exactly where this argument travels. There's so many arguments that get initiated that it doesn't take too long for it to conflict with itself. And it doesn't seem to matter.
It's just tough when you're working backwards. In a weird way, I kind of feel like I wouldn't say sympathy, because like I'm hostile to what these people are doing because they're creating narratives and stuff like like they're creating narratives and that's bad, especially when it's on our side and we're going up against a group of people who we were describing earlier, akin to Scientology. And able to tease that out, so it's bad to have like these narratives like defund the police screwed us out of all these elections, or that Elizabeth Warren and the DNC is the reason Bernie didn't win this time. That might be true in 2016. I'm not debating that. I'm saying in 2020, it's actually bad to live in the trauma of these two recent narratives. And you definitely see both wings of the party very much stuck in the trauma of those narratives rather than trying to process the very complicated lay of the land, electorally speaking. I mean, because like one thing I am not calling for is for the Democratic campaigns or anything to get like substantially more moderate. Like I think it's pretty clear in the context of this episode, but like there is an electoral nuance to winning in both Wisconsin and Georgia that is sophisticated and complicated. It involves race, class, changing of manufacturing industries, shifts in the economy. It's nuanced. It's not something that's really great to discuss on Twitter because of its level of nuance. But there's a sweet spot thing that has to be achieved by either wing of the party. If they go too far to white centrism, like the Spanbergers of the world want, Spanberger, like basically all but dog whistling, we need to be whiter. If you do that, you lose Georgia. If you go too much in a progressive direction, you might run the risk of losing like Wisconsin or Arizona or some of these other states that are hanging on by 10,000 votes. So it's tricky, and it's thoughtful, and it requires, analysis, and really requires not starting at what you want the endpoint to be and trying to reverse analyze the events such that you can end up back at that endpoint. It's much easier to just go where the journey takes you.
Yeah, and it's easier to do that whenever you are represented by someone who can carry that torch. But when you have no representation in DC, just generally to speak of, if you're far enough to the left of center, it doesn't take long before your representation is gone. Then the way to actually to get change is through a movement, irrespective of what goes on in DC. And so then if you have that attitude that just to be cavalier about it, man, there's a long line of movements, of cavalier movements that have died without a transaction, and you're
And at this point,
it's fun to let the wind take you where it takes you, but at some point there is a level of discipline required in any movement that is not going to be so immediately pleasing.
Well, this is a really tough time for activist politics on the left because I think it's going to require an immense amount of patience now. Because Harris is right in this sense. And this is why I wanted to end it on that quote. Harris is right that like a door closed in the 2020 primaries. And there was an opportunity there. It was a blown opportunity. It frankly, we could sit there and discuss why till the end of time, and probably will on some level, especially like in beer talk and that sort of thing. But going forward, progressive activists need to figure out what is the agenda we want to see advanced, and how do you advance that agenda in the absence of having politicians who are on your side other than AOC. AOC is an advocate politician, but like activists are going to have to be able to do this knowing that Joe Biden and the people in his administration are hostile to him.
In my opinion, the best thing activists could do for the next, I don't know, year or longer is to figure out why the hell socialism is a dirty word, and to how many people, and to what demographics. And
so they just need to fix polling.
Yeah.
If the left somehow fixed polling, that would be fascinating. Because I mean that's the other thing too. Like, if who you support as a politician polling is broken, you have to imagine issue polling is kind of broken too.
Yeah. What do you call things that are socialist agendas that don't make people think of socialism? Think about it for a moment before you just before the first phrase comes to mind, and you move on.
Well, I mean, think about the value added of it too. I think back to Planned Parenthood. To me, is one of the all-time great branded organizations. It probably would have been defunded, which it's a thing. Defund Planned Parenthood's been a thing that's been out there. That's been a catchphrase. Except defund Planned Parenthood's tricky because people like parenthood, people like children, and people think between planned. What's the opposite of planned? Unplanned. Between planned and unplanned things, planned things are better. That is the default disposition. So Planned Parenthood has been able to be the advocate or have the branding framing of like, we advocate not having any kids, but actually planning what your family is going to be. And of course, there'll be the history school to be like, well, you don't understand the full history of Planned Parenthood, Chris, blah, blah. Point is, doesn't matter. Don't need to understand the full history. If you're explaining, you're losing. Planned Parenthood needs no explanation. Everyone, you say the term, people understand the term. Parenthood, still having kids, but actually planning for it. And people kind of get what planning for it means, whether that's condoms or contraceptives or abortive services.
Yeah. What again do conservatives call raising taxes? What do they? How do they get away with doing that again? They renamed raising taxes.
Well, they say increase revenue.
Yeah, see, that's an easy one.
Yeah. And
If-
conservatives also are like good at doing like lots of fees and fines, which are basically taxes in disguise. But when you attach a punitive stigma to it, it's like the bad person's paying a tax, and so it's a bad people's tax.
Yeah, so I guess the greater problem hasn't changed. The more sophisticated messaging outfit is still winning, or getting more out of their a bigger bang for the buck in as far as the people they represent. And they're
Well, it's just weird. I mean, like I think the other part of it is the Democratic Party is just not interested in messaging, or at least they are led at the top by people who are fundamentally just not interested in it. Because, like, I think if Pelosi and Schumer and Biden wanted Frank Luntz, he's for sale, dude. That guy's so for sale. And like, yes, he's kind of a grifter. But he also like helped the Republicans come up with shit like job creators and stuff. And like dumb phrases like that have been around for a decade. And I remember the week they rolled out job creators as a new phrase because like no one said it before in my life, and then like everyone was saying it. Like I remember that being a thing post 2008 as a way of protecting capital. The big business and big, rather than calling it big business, they're job creators. Everyone likes having a job. I guess, depends on your job, but, yeah, like, they could have hired Frank Luntz. They could have gotten messaging people. I mean, why is Lincoln Project even a power broker in this party? Cause like the Democrats have been, they've been uninterested in advertising with some force. They don't do a good job at negative partisanship. I know they have a very wide and mixed opinion on this show, or for this audience for sure. There's some people who really like it and like the podcast and get mad when I talk bad about them at all. There are other people who hate the shit out of them. And I don't like them, but I don't hate them viscerally. Why I don't hate them viscerally, just to finish the thought here, is because I think that they really give the Democrats the negative partisanship like punch that they don't have. And like Chuck Schumer, when did Chuck Schumer ever dissed anyone ever? In like a way that you were like, got him, Schumer. Right? Like I even throw that out there and you're like, come on. And Nancy Pelosi, her version of got him is, which like some people are like, yeah, Slay Queen, and like people like you and me are like, Jesus fuck, really? Like you won't impeach him, but you'll sit there and just like give him a little derisive clap. Like, okay.
Yeah. With regards to the Lincoln Project, I know that I guess it was an assumption, it was a safe assumption that Joe Biden was going to distance himself from the word socialist. He was not going to let himself be labeled as such. And that engages the Lincoln Project in the willingness to play ball with him. And so the Lincoln Project is there in the middle, and they can either oppose someone who also opposes being labeled a socialist, or they can lean into him. And they leaned into him, and I'm glad they did. But if you want to play with that Liz Warren thought experiment, if the way the election does not go in Elizabeth Warren's favor, the way that she does not get 80 million votes like Biden did, is because once the Lincoln Project recognizes that they have someone on their hands that does embrace that word, they are not opposing Trump anymore. It's over. And that's when they flip the script and they go full tilt against socialism.
Or they go ambivalent, and like this is the thing. Like, yeah, to your point, I don't see a relationship forming either between Warren's campaign and the Lincoln Project, or certainly not Sanders' campaign and the Lincoln Project. And I think that is yet another example of like why Joe Biden was the most electable, but like not in the way they say it, just like by virtue of the fact that like certain things don't, they just, I mean, I guess here's why. I'll tell you why. When we say electable, not in the way they say it, it's because I think that like Sanders or Warren would have gotten more votes than Donald Trump. But it's not a popular vote contest, and the Electoral College map erases the popular vote. And Trump's like taking that one step further now and saying like you don't even actually need to really recognize the Electoral College voting. You need to recognize the electors, and they're the actual powers of validation here. But like the Electoral College erases the popular vote majority, the liberal majority that is in the electorate, and it narrows the margin to basically give the Republicans 50-50. And so then if you pick anyone, because of all this built-in field advantage for the Republicans, yeah, I think Sanders and Warren don't win because of the stupidity of the Electoral College. Which would be I kind of my closing thought here. I know I always like I seem to wrap around to it a lot, but here we are yet again in an example of like, okay, if I want progressive politicians, particularly in the executive branch, to win, there has to be a repeal the Electoral College campaign. There does. That has to be pressured on. I think
What's the motivation? What's the motivation by the people on the inside?
For the people on the inside, it's basically nothing. I get that. I just think that if you're asking me where left activism needs to go, if you ever hope in winning primaries and then winning a general election, because here's the flip of this, right? Like, do you want to lose with Sanders? I'm sure I could get some contrarian to make the argument of like, win the nomination and lose with Sanders is better than winning with Biden. I'm not that fucking guy. I'm not here to hear that argument. So when we get a progressive nominated for the president, which I believe will happen someday, and I'm going to fucking keep on fighting for, AOC is going to be 35 here soon enough. They still need to win the general fucking election. And I think, you know, like I don't want to lose with McGovern. You know what I mean? Like and if anything, if history teaches us anything, losing with McGovern's a massive setback. So in a weird way, yeah, you know what I mean? Like losing with McGovern was bad. Yeah, like it was bad for activism. So losing was like in a weird way, the conspiracy and the we could have had it. We almost got him, but for the meddling kids. that might actually be better than having your ass handed to you like a hat. In the electoral college of all things too. And then the Dems scold you that, okay, yeah, you won the popular vote, but you're not electable. You're grousing about the popular vote, but nothing's been done to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's I have trouble seeing any political group exchanging political capital for process and process alone. And that's not to say that it's the wrong idea. It's a valid idea. But whenever you just say, congratulations, we fixed it, the American people don't immediately feel that. And so you just exchange a lot of political capital for not a lot of feel good feelings. And now you're left with not enough political capital to do anything else to which you can run on a few years later. And so I don't like it is that like you know that I advocate for optimizing the electoral college as opposed to repealing it, but it's not because I don't think it's not because I think it is it's the better system than the popular vote. It's not, but it's definitely not optimized either. And to I just have trouble seeing any group that gets into power coming to the consensus within themselves that we're willing to exchange what little power we have for process.
I mean, it's at the end of the day, are you going to stand up for the idea that one person's vote should be equal to another person's vote? My vote should be worth the exact same weight as your vote. Like that's sort of the argument. It's like a fundamental equality argument. And in terms of who I'm talking about as the agents here, I'm not talking about the politicians. You were asking me about what should activists do now that you have a long waiting cycle before you have any real credible chance of grabbing the presidential nomination. They should get involved in activism, and if they want to eventually win the presidency, the Electoral College is currently serving as a massive, massive bulwark of any progressive nominee ever winning the presidency.
So
And
who
unless
is,
so it doesn't fucking matter if we nominate Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders gets his ass handed to him like a fucking hat in Georgia.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, like no, it's not because I want to talk about it. It's not because it's gonna be easy. It's not. It's not because it's gonna happen next year. It's not. It's kind of like the Supreme Court thing. You can blissfully ignore it. You can talk about optimizing it, like how I'll talk about using religious liberty and abusing it like a cudgel so as to reduce it into absurdity. Okay, yeah, no, that's cool. It's gimmicky. You and I kind of like these little gimmicky Rube Goldberg mechanisms. But it's also because like the system's fucked up. Like the reality is like, okay, yeah, I can challenge because of religious liberty, and I can, you get more workers' rights because of religious liberty. But like, what am I doing? I'm abusing a fucking fucked up system. And I'm actually taking a bad thing and arguably making it worse to do good things in my own view. It has to go. In the case of, it's just a necessary obstruction right now, unless you get some miraculous Midwestern progressive candidate, and they don't exist right now. The progressive candidates we have are like AOC and Cory Bush, great people, love them, but they do not match the profile of Wisconsin, Georgia, and some of these like weird combinations of flavors that you need to have.
Yeah, so I think the best I agree with you that from an activist standpoint that it's not something that you can ignore, but as far as moving the needle on this while you are under a Biden term, I guess.
You have to march the Capitol, dude. Like that's the only option.
As you know, I've become I kind of had a shift in my understanding, which I've kind of brought over to the new handle that I'm at, or the one that I've adopted over at Postman Retweets or Postman RTs. the single issue party. And so if you are an activist who believes that above all else this needs to change first, I would advocate for initiating a single issue third party called the Repeal the Electoral College Party. And then if you're able to get popular votes in places that otherwise don't matter and signal to the establishment that this is going to grow or else, I don't know how else to better
March to the Capitol. March to the Capitol. No, brother.
March to the Capitol.
No, fucking no. Blow up an election. No, like duff an election. Libertarian up the election. For the Democrats, and you'll definitely advance electoral college. All right, we've gone a long time here. So got you plug Postman retweets, yeah?
Yes, Postman retweets. Safe Politics is more of a reference at this point. I'm not really active on it at all. If you want to hear from someone who is championing single issue third parties, because after 2020, as well as Sean and I's discussion on who is the biggest loser, I've determined that we are the biggest loser, and that not only does some structural reform need to happen electorally, but if we're going to push that envelope, it's going to be because we utilize the Electoral College to such effectiveness that the establishment doesn't want to use it anymore. So that's the open and shut of where I'm at right now. And if you'd like to join me in this thought experiment, that's where I'll be.
All right. The show at DWATG, listener support podcast, patreon.com/DWATG. If you enjoyed the audio, imagine how much better the video would be. It would certainly have more colors than your experience of the show did. Unless, like, you drop some acid and then listen to this podcast while it was kicking in. And then somewhere around the hour mark where we started getting into Neera Tanden, you were really starting to feel it. And, like, the synesthesia was kicking in, walls were melting a little bit. I was raging at that John F. Harris guy. What were we talking about here? I don't know. Go to patreon.com/DWATG. Watch the video. Support the show. Buck a show is all we ask. I'm at Chris Novembrino. Show's at DWATG. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. And I'm going to put out some YouTube stuff at some point. I keep saying that. It's tough. I'm putting out episodes. I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm managing a band. I do a lot of shit. I love doing this. Thank you. And thank you for supporting the show. Life is good, man. I hope everyone out there is staying safe. Christmas, just remember, like, you know, I'm definitely doing this. You don't have to break the bank this year to do nice stuff for people. So, you know, be thoughtful and, try to do something good for someone around you here and have a good holiday season. All right. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Until the next one. Bye-bye.